chapter 14 and the autonomic nervous system. We basically just went over this chart with what we were talking about, okay? So just remember where we are. Also remember that even though we are finished with your last test, a lot of that same information is going to be helpful with this chapter. Okay, so we're still going to talk about neurons, we're still going to talk about neurotransmitters, and all that jazz, okay? So here we go. The sympathetic nervous system is the fight or flight response. The book also says fright. The fight, flight, or fright response. I do a fourth F. I fall. Did any of you guys fall when you're? Okay. So fight, flight, fright, and fall. Okay. So that's what we're looking at with this. It is activated during exercise, excitement, or during emergencies, or perceived emergencies. Okay, not everything is an actual emergency that can cause the sympathetic nervous system to kick in. Okay? We abbreviate the sympathetic nervous system SNS, so make sure you know that. You'll see that throughout the PowerPoint. You'll probably see it on the test represented that way. Okay, the parasympathetic, or PSNS, is for resting and digesting. It brings you back down to normal. Okay? So it's concerned with maintenance and conserving energy. Now, we look at these two divisions separately and say that one's fight or flight, one's rest and digest. And there are certain times where one or the other is going to be in charge. Okay? So when you're exercising, the sympathetic nervous system is in charge. If you are sitting on the couch just watching television, the parasympathetic division is in charge. But if we are maintaining homeostasis and keeping things balanced, we're going to have a give and take of both together. Okay? So if we're looking at heart rate, if your heart rate gets too high, the parasympathetic will jump in to bring it back down. If your heart rate gets too low, the sympathetic will jump in to bring it back up. Okay? So it's a balancing act between the two. Okay? All right. Now, this next slide is a beautiful picture without a lot of words, but has a lot of information in it. Okay, so we're going to spend some time talking about this slide. Okay, so divisions of the nervous system, they're neurotransmitters, and a little bit of the anatomy that goes with it. Okay, so the first column, or the first row here, is the somatic nervous system. We've spent a lot of time talking about the somatic nervous system. What does the somatic nervous system innervate? What are we telling to move? Skeletal muscle. Okay? What is our neurotransmitter that we're using? Acetylcholine. It's always acetylcholine. We're always innervating skeletal muscle, and it's always stimulatory. We're always causing that muscle to contract when that neuron fires. Okay? Also notice that we have one neuron. It's going to go from the central nervous system all the way down to wherever we're going. So if this is going to your big toe, that's a really long neuron. But we only have one. All right. Now let's get to your autonomic nervous system down here. And we've already said the autonomic nervous system is divided into the sympathetic and parasympathetic. Okay? Now, anatomy to start with. If we look at our neurons, notice that instead of having one long neuron that's heavily myelinated, we now have two neurons. Okay? There is a preganglionic neuron and a postganglionic neuron. Okay? So pre and postganglionic. What is a ganglion? Collection of cell bodies. And in this case, it's going to be the cell body of that postganglionic neuron. Okay? He lives there in the ganglion. Okay? So, we have preganglionic, postganglionic, and down here we have preganglionic, postganglionic. Okay. Another thing to notice, the preganglionic axon is myelinated. The postganglionic axon is non-myelinated. Okay? And we are innervating, you guys have already told me, smooth muscle, organs, glands, cardiac muscle, all that jazz. Okay? All right, so that's anatomy stuff. Now, let's talk about our neurotransmitters. First, let's let's jump down here to parasympathetic. He's the easiest one. We only have one row to look at here, okay? So in parasympathetic, we have a preganglionic axon. He can release acetylcholine, and acetylcholine will send a signal to that postganglionic axon. Then that postganglionic axon is going to send a signal to one of these guys, and he is going to use acetylcholine. Okay? So far, we just use acetylcholine. It's the same. Now, that acetylcholine, though, can be stimulatory or inhibitory. And we'll get to that a little bit later. But it can do either one depending on what receptor it's binding to. Okay, so parasympathetic acetylcholine. Now, the sympathetic. Sympathetic, fight or flight. We are having fear. We're having suspense. If I were to just ask you, previous to this class, what does your body release when you get scared? Or like when you do something scary like skydiving? Adrenaline. Okay, so our neurotransmitter here is adrenaline. Okay, but it has a fancy name. Okay, so his name, NE, is norepinephrine. Okay, norepinephrine. Now, norepinephrine is a neurotransmitter. So he is released from an axon, and he is going to go to that organ and activate it or inactivate it, depending on what he does. Okay? The norepinephrine is the neurotransmitter released from the axon. You also see here, though, that there's this other pathway that the sympathetic nervous system can use. So in this second pathway, our preganglionic axon doesn't innervate a postganglionic axon. Instead, he activates the adrenal medulla. And the adrenal medulla releases hormones. And he is going to release epinephrine. And epinephrine, because it's a hormone, is released into the bloodstream, and it will travel all over your body and be able to bind to many of these different organs and cause some effects. Okay? Now, norepinephrine, neurotransmitter, he's released into that little synaptic cleft. He's used for a short period of time. Then he gets broken down and put back into the axon. Epinephrine, however, because he's sent out in the blood, can last longer. Okay, so it has a longer half-life. All right, so we have norepinephrine here, and we have epinephrine and some norepinephrine released here from our adrenal medulla, goes through the blood vessel, and then gets to the same target organs. Okay, now, right here in the middle, between our preganglionic and postganglionic axon, we're still using acetylcholine. Between our preganglionic axon and our adrenal medulla, we're still using acetylcholine. Okay? So acetylcholine is used pretty much everywhere except norepinephrine between the postganglionic axon and that target organ. Okay? So that is a lot of information on this one picture without any words. Okay, so are there any questions about this? No? Yeah.
So for the sympathetic nervous system, there's the ganglion, the top one, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The adrenal medulla replaces the ganglion.
So the adrenal medulla replaces, this ganglion and this postganglionic neuron. So this whole thing isn't here.
So there's no post-ganglionic neuron.
Exactly. Okay. Anything else? All right. Then let's look at each of these divisions separately. A lot of what you're going to see is that they're opposites of each other. Okay? So part of it is just keeping them straight, which one's which. So we'll start with the parasympathetic, the location, where is it found? We say that it has a craniosacral location. Okay, so cranio means head, sacral means the sacrum. Okay, so the bottom of the spinal cord. So we're coming from either end of the spinal cord. Okay, so we have some coming out of here, our cranial nerves, and we have some coming out of the sacral area of the spinal cord. Okay, we have ganglion that are cell bodies located away from the central nervous system. Okay, so in our picture, this is our preganglionic neuron. The ganglion is over here. And then we have a postganglionic neuron right there. Okay? So the ganglion are away from the central nervous system. Because of that, we have long preganglion fibers and short postganglion fibers. Okay? Just because of where the ganglion is located. So you can see on our picture, even though we come from only the head and the tail, pretty much, that we're still going to all the different organs. Okay? All right. What does the parasympathetic nervous system do? Okay. I'm going to click the slide, and it's going to be a long list of things. However, I want you to think of this like we do with a lot of things in anatomy. It's not as a list that you have to memorize, but it's something that you can conceptually think about when you get to that question on the test. Okay? So if we know that sympathetic is fight or flight, parasympathetic is the opposite of that. Okay? So let's see if we can come up with these on our own. Let's skip the first couple of these. Okay, but your cardiac plexus, your heart, if you're resting and digesting, what's going to happen to your heart rate? It's going to slow down. Your pulmonary plexus, your lungs, what's going to happen to your breathing rate? Slow down. Okay, you're resting and digesting. You're digesting your food. So your esophageal plexus, your esophagus is the tube that the food goes down to your stomach. So you increase swallowing. The parasympathetic nervous system drives food digestion, resting and digesting. Okay, and then sacral outflow at the bottom. He regulates the bladder, the ureters, the rectum, and the reproductive system, which means that you're allowed to go to the bathroom. Okay, so you can control your sphincter, and the sphincter will open, and you can go to the bathroom. Okay? Now, a couple of these at the top, they're a little less just give me things. Okay, so let's talk about them. Okay, pupil constriction and lens bulging. So, if you are in an emergency, if you are having that fight or flight response, how far away from you do you need to see? Far away so you can see somebody coming at you, or just what's around you in your little bubble? Far away, right? Because if you are in danger, you need to see if somebody is sneaking around a corner to pop up and get you, right? If, though, you are parasympathetic nervous system, you're just resting and digesting, you don't have to worry about what's all over the place. You're just worried about what's here in your own little personal bubble, right? So, parasympathetic nervous system causes pupil constriction. Your pupil is that black circle in the middle of your eye. It's actually a hole. Okay, so the darkness in there is the darkness that is inside your eye. So, kind of that. Okay, but those pupils constrict. They get smaller. Yes, the darkness in yourself. Okay, so the pupil constricts, it gets smaller, it lets less light in. Okay? You also have lens bulging. So inside your eye, you have a lens that can change shape to help you focus on things. So if the lens is bulged out like that, then you can focus on things that are close to you. Okay? So all these things are allowing you to focus on things that are just in your little bubble. Okay, so that's parasympathetic. Okay, our second one, we stimulate secretion of the large glands in the head. Sounds fun, right? So your saliva, your tears, your mucus, you're increasing production of those. But if you're resting and you're digesting, you need those fluids. You need saliva. Saliva has amylase in it, which is your first step of digestion. So we increase those so that we can stay lubricated and protected from the world around us. Okay? Because tears and saliva have antimicrobials in them. All right. So that is the parasympathetic nervous system? Again, not a list to memorize, but something to think of conceptually. Okay? Any questions about those? All right. Then we'll jump onto the sympathetic nervous system. Again, it's just the opposite of parasympathetic. So you need to memorize one list and then know that the other one is the other. Okay? So, sympathetic nervous system. If you are sympathizing with somebody, you are trying to help them out. You're trying to see what they feel like. So the sympathetic nervous system has sympathy for you and helps you run away. Okay. So our location is thoracolumbar. So in the thorax and lumbar areas where they're going to come from, there are short preganglionic fibers, but longer postganglionic fibers. Okay? And again, we're going to our same organs. All right. But this time, we're going to give them different information, right? Because we want to fight or run away. Okay. The effects of the sympathetic nervous system, the fight or flight response, are diffuse and long-lasting. So again, think about epinephrine. These are hormones. They last longer in the bloodstream than a neurotransmitter does. So because they last longer, the effects last longer. So if you've ever been scared, anybody ever been scared here before? Me. Okay. So when you're scared, it takes you a while to calm down after the scary event, doesn't it? Okay, because there's still adrenaline in the bloodstream. Okay? All right, so specific. Okay. Let's again skip the first one. These are opposites of the parasympathetic. So, inhibits digestion. You're not worried about breaking down your food because you need that energy to go to running. Okay. Increased heart rate, right? Decreased saliva and tears because you're not digesting things. You need to just not worry about that. Dilation of eyes and lifts the eyelids. So your pupils get bigger, you're going to let more light in, and you get this face. You ready? Okay. So your eyes get really big, and part of that is to allow more light and more information into your eyes, so that you're able to focus on things farther away. You're able to get more sensory information in for your brain to then decide what to do. Okay? You also get increased mental alertness, so your brain turns on, so that you can think about things better. Okay? And finally, let's go back to innervation of all arteries and veins. So, your arteries and veins that are carrying blood around your body have the ability to constrict and get smaller, or dilate and get bigger. Vasodilation, yep. Okay, if you constrict something, the blood flowing through there decreases. So this is how we inhibit things like digestion. We can cut off the blood supply, make it smaller, and not send as much blood to digestion because we don't need the blood there. No digestion is happening. We need to send that blood instead to the muscles so they can run away. Okay? So we can cut off blood supply to certain areas. And when I say cut off, we're decreasing. We're not completely cutting off. If we completely cut off, it dies. Okay? But we decrease blood flow to certain areas. Okay. When we decrease blood flow to certain areas, it will have an effect on blood pressure, which we'll get to in a little bit. Yeah.
So it's like decreased tears and stuff, but what happens when people are like scared or mad and they start to cry?
So there is a combination, it'll be the very, very, very last slide that we talked about today, but there is limbic system, autonomic nervous system connection. So limbic system is your house of your emotions and stuff like that. Yeah, they're connected together. Okay, and also kind of on that same train of thought, somebody who's so scared they pee themselves. Okay, so if you have somebody who's so scared that they pee themselves. Now, bladder control was part of the parasympathetic nervous system. We're able to evacuate our bladder because of the parasympathetic nervous system, not the sympathetic nervous system. But what can happen in a stressful, scary event, if it is so stressful and so scary, Your cortical control, your cortex, is thinking more about that stressful event than it is about holding your urine. So if your bladder gets full, you're not able to think, hold my pee until I get to the bathroom. Your brain's thinking about other things, and you can pee yourself. Okay. All right. Are you guys ready? I've got you a short little video to watch here as we finish up this section. So you don't have to actually count, but feel your heart rate. Put it on your carotid artery. How does it feel? Is it a little elevated? A little elevated? So let's talk about what happened during the video. So at the beginning, when the car was rolling down the hill, it was like a car commercial, and everything was nice and peaceful and calm. What part of your autonomic nervous system was in control of you right then? Your parasympathetic nervous system was keeping you calm, keeping you rested and digested. Okay. Then when the scary thing jumped up on the screen, which portion of your autonomic nervous system jumped in? Your sympathetic nervous system. Okay, so what were the physiological effects of the sympathetic nervous system? You were scared. Okay, so that is an emotional effect. What's the physiological effect? Heart rate increase. Yes. Yes. So a lot of you guys jumped. There was some reflexes going on there. You saw something scary. You glided. Is that a word? You tried to get away. Respiration. Did any of you guys feel like you started breathing heavy? Okay. And again, it was a short scare. So not all of the effects were probably noticeable. Okay. But then hopefully, if we measure your heart rate again a little bit later, hopefully we will calm back down. It'll take a little bit because epinephrine is in your bloodstream, but you should be able to calm back down and get back to your resting state, right? Okay, because your parasympathetic nervous system is kicking in. Okay, so for this next part, in class today, there are going to be a total of 4 questions for you guys to answer. This needs to be written on a piece of paper and turned in. You can work with your partner. If you work with a partner person beside of you, put both names on the same sheet and just turn in one paper. Okay? Your first 2 questions are right here. So talk about it with your partner and then answer for number 1 and number 2. All right, guys. For number 1, First of all, if you have a friend who describes their weekend to you by saying that they produced a large amount of saliva, they may not be somebody you want to be friends with. I'm just saying. Okay, but if that were the case, if you had a friend who told you they produced a large amount of saliva over the weekend, what were they probably doing out of that list? So of the four, yeah, is watching football on the couch, following, eating in the cafeteria. Okay, all the other ones are examples of the sympathetic nervous system. Okay, because what they were describing is parasympathetic, resting and digesting. Okay. All right, number 2. What's your answer for that one? C. The termination of the sympathetic response is slow because epinephrine is a hormone. It's released in the blood. Good job. All right, we'll have 2 more questions here in a little bit, so just hold on to that paper. Okay, now, it's classification time, guys. I know this is your favorite part of every chapter. Okay, so we're going to look at neurotransmitter release and the receptors. So this is a picture you've seen like 20 million times now. We have a presynaptic axon. The action potential comes down. The neurotransmitter is released into the synaptic cleft, and it binds to a receptor on the postsynaptic neuron. Okay? Our first slide is about the fibers. So they are about these presynaptic neurons. Okay? First of all, we have 2 neurotransmitters we're dealing with here, acetylcholine and norepinephrine. Acetylcholine is used in which part of the autonomic nervous system? Which branch? Parasympathetic? Because norepinephrine can also be called adrenaline, and that's for the sympathetic nervous system, right? That's right? Right? Okay. So, if you are a fiber, if you are a presynaptic neuron that releases acetylcholine, part of the PSNF, you are called cholinergic. You're a cholinergic fiber. Sounds like acetylcholine. Okay. If you are a fiber that releases norepinephrine, you are adrenergic. So think adrenaline. Okay? So that's talking about the fibers that is releasing the neurotransmitter. Okay? Good so far? But when we look at the activity, something that's actually happening, it depends on the receptors, what they're binding to. Most of these receptors are going to be ligand-gated channels. And so they're going to open or allow certain things through. If they open and allow something more positive to come inside, it's going to cause that to become depolarized and closer to an action potential. If it opens and allows something negative to come in, it's going to become hyperpolarized and farther away from an action potential. Okay, so the receptors are really where the business happens. Okay? So, let's talk about these receptors. We're also going to classify them. Now, there's words on the screen. If you like those, that's fine. I'm going to draw a chart over here on this side. Okay? So we've got some receptors. There are 2 big categories of receptors. Our first one are the cholinergic receptors. Okay? From what we talked about on the last slide, our cholinergic fibers release what chemical? Acetylcholine. So cholinergic receptors are going to bind to acetylcholine. So cholinergic receptors bind to acetylcholine. Right? There are 2 big categories of cholinergic receptors. Nicotinic and muscarinic. Both of those bind to acetylcholine, but they are named based off of lab studies and what chemical can bind to them the best. So, any guesses what binds the best to nicotinic receptors? Nicotine. Okay, so this is where nicotine is having its effect. Okay, so where do we find nicotinic receptors. We see nicotinic receptors on all motor end plates. So that is at a neuromuscular junction where we are innervating skeletal muscle. So we see nicotinic receptors on skeletal muscle. Which division of the nervous system innervates skeletal muscle? Somatic? Yep, that was from last chapter, right? Okay. We also see nicotinic receptors on all postganglionic neurons. Okay? I'm just going to abbreviate it here because you've got it on your notes here. Okay? So this goes back to that first picture we saw that was really, really intense. It had a lot of stuff on it. Okay? So we have preganglionic neuron, postganglionic neuron. So these nicotinic receptors are found on postganglionic neurons. So they're going to be these guys right here. Okay? Because acetylcholine is always what's released there. Okay? That means that these nicotinic receptors on the postganglionic neurons are found in both the parasympathetic nervous system and the sympathetic nervous system, right? Because both of them have preganglionic and postganglionic neurons. Okay? And nicotinic receptors are found on the hormone-producing cells of the adrenal medulla. So, remember that part of the picture. We have this guy again. That instead of innervating a postganglionic neuron, innervated the adrenal medulla, which produced epinephrine. And so he also has those nicotinic receptors. Okay? So let's also put adrenal medulla. Okay? Which division of the autonomic nervous system uses the adrenal medulla and produces epinephrine? Sympathetic. Okay? So that's your adrenaline. Okay? By the way, guys, that's why it's called adrenaline, because it comes from the adrenal. Adrenal gland. Okay. Now, our muscarinic receptors are found on the effector cells stimulated by postganglionic cholinergic fibers. That means effector cells. So in the effector, the organ that you're trying to send a signal to, there are receptors here after acetylcholine has been released. Okay? So we are going to be on organs. And if acetylcholine has been released and going to the organ, which division uses acetylcholine? Remember, parasympathetic uses acetylcholine, sympathetic uses adrenaline, so epinephrine, norepinephrine. Okay? So all the organs that are innervated by the parasympathetic nervous system. Now, this next one is important as in we need to tell you the truth. It's not important as in it's an outlier. Okay? So it also says some sympathetic target organs. So we've already told you, we've had all these slides that said sympathetic nervous system equals epinephrine, norepinephrine. That is it, cut and dry. That's all there is. Okay. So this one instance is sweat glands. So when the sympathetic nervous system innervates sweat glands, he uses acetylcholine instead of norepinephrine. Why is it that way? Why is it just the sweat glands? I don't know. He's just that outlier. He's that weird one. Okay? All right, so these are all your acetylcholine receptors. Questions about those before we go on to our norepinephrine receptors? Good? Okay. Then, our norepinephrine receptors are called adrenergic receptors. Okay? So adrenergic receptors bind to norepinephrine. There are two basic categories, alpha receptors and beta receptors. Okay, we're going to talk about a couple of examples. There's a big table, table 14.3, that has all of them on it. The ones that you need to know for your objectives are alpha 1 and beta 1. So those are the ones I'm going to add to the chart, but we'll talk about these others too. Okay, so alpha 1 is a type of alpha receptor. He is found on blood vessels. And he causes them to constrict. So he causes them to get smaller. Okay? So it's going to reroute blood. It's going to keep the blood from going to places like the digestive system. Okay? When you do this, when you constrict the blood vessel, it's going to change your blood pressure. What's it going to do to blood pressure if you're trying to force the same amount of blood through a smaller hole? It's going to raise it. You're going to have to put more force behind it to get it to go through. Okay, so this also increases blood pressure. Okay? So it's alpha 1 receptors. Okay, alpha 2 receptors are not on the objectives, but alpha 2 receptors are found on adrenergic axon terminals that inhibit norepinephrine release. So, this was, do you guys remember the presynaptic inhibition that we talked about really quickly in one section, where this is a synapse we're releasing neurotransmitter. The action potential has already gotten all the way down, but we can inhibit it right here. These receptors are alpha 2 receptors. Okay? All right, beta 1 is the beta receptor you need to know. Beta 1 receptors are found on the heart, right? Yes. Okay? They increase heart rate and increase the strength of contraction. Okay? So your heart's beating faster and stronger. Guess what this does to blood pressure? Decreases blood pressure. Okay? All of these over here, these adrenergic receptors, they're using norepinephrine, so they are part of which division of the autonomic nervous system? All of these are sympathetic nervous system, because that's the only one that uses norepinephrine. So, does increased blood pressure, increased heart rate, increased heart strength, does that make sense for the sympathetic nervous system? Yeah. Okay. All right. Some other beta receptors, beta 2 receptors are on lungs and blood vessels serving the heart, so they cause dilation of both of those. So you dilate your lungs, you get more oxygen in. You dilate the blood vessels serving the heart, you get more blood to the heart. Okay, and then beta 3 receptors are on adipose tissue. Remember, it's fat tissue, so it's storage of energy. And so these receptors, when norepinephrine binds to it, stimulates lipolysis, or the breakdown of lipids. So we're going into those fat stores, and we're breaking them down to get energy out of them. Okay? Which, if you're fighting or you're running away, you need lots of energy. Okay? So that also happens due to norepinephrine release. Okay? Questions about your adrenergic receptors? All right, we are doing good, guys. All right. 2 more questions? Chat with your neighbor. Write down your answer. number one, there was a bank robbery. And then the witness was able to remember very significant details about the 5 suspects when they talked to the police later. Why is this? First of all, which division of the nervous system was involved for that to happen? Sympathetic. Okay, because she or he, whichever one, they were probably really scared during the bank robbery, right? So their fight or flight response kicked in. Okay, what did that cause to happen to the person? Yeah, you know? Okay, so what did that cause to happen to the person physiologically to increase their ability to remember details? Okay, increased mental alertness. That is one of the things that can happen. Okay, so you increase mental alertness, you have better awareness of what's around you, and you can pick up those details. What else? Pupil dilation. Okay, so if your pupils are larger, you're getting in more sensory information. Okay, so you're picking up more of what's going on around you. Do I have any others? What happens to the eyes themselves? Okay, so your eyelids themselves raise. Okay, so you're able to get in more sensory information. Okay, very good. All right, we haven't talked about this one specifically. I want to see if you can put the pieces together. So number 4, following or even during preparation for an A&P exam, students often come down with colds. Is there a relationship between stress and the onset of illness? Yeah. Yes. Yes. Okay, so your sympathetic nervous system does decrease your ability to fight off infections. What are some things that the sympathetic nervous system is doing that we've had on the list that decreases its ability to fight infections? Anybody come up with any specific ones? What does the sympathetic nervous system do to your saliva and your tears and your mucus? Decreases it. Okay, your saliva, your tears, and your mucus are one of your first lines of defense from microorganisms entering your body. Okay, so if you're stressed, especially for long periods of time, and you're decreasing the wetness of all this, you're going to increase the things that are going to get into you. Okay? Something else that happens, one of your stress hormones is called cortisol, and cortisol is on its own reduces your immune system. Okay? Now, some people are more susceptible to this than others. My husband is very susceptible to this, so he's a pastor, and Easter is like the Super Bowl for pastors. I don't know if you guys know this yet. Okay, but it's like Super Bowl. So Holy Week leading up to it, there's stuff to do like all the time. Okay, and then you're planning for Easter Sunday where everybody comes to church, even if they don't really come to church. So they come to church on Easter Sunday, and you really want to, give them a good sermon. Okay, let them know Jesus. So every Easter, the week after Easter is just it's spit. He's sick, he's in bed, there's no helping him. Okay, so last thing we want to talk about are some drugs that affect this, the autonomic nervous system. So first of all, tricyclic antidepressants, they're named based on their shape, like their chemical structure, but they increase the amount of time norepinephrine and serotonin, that's the other good, stimulate the postsynaptic membrane. So they're feel-good drugs. They're antidepressants. You also use them for anti-anxiety. However, they aren't used quite as much anymore because there's better drugs that don't have all these common side effects. Let me read you some of these and see if they sound familiar to you from anything we talked about today. You ready? Dry mouth, blurred vision, sweating, dizziness and lightheadedness, drowsiness, restlessness, racing heartbeat, increased sweating, urinary retention, constipation, tremor, increased appetite, weight gain, low sex drive, etc. What does all that sound like? Sounds like something horrible, right? Which division of the autonomic nervous system is in overdrive? Sympathetic nervous system is in overdrive. Okay, sympathetic nervous system, the fight or flight response. Dry mouth, you decrease saliva production. Racing heartbeat. Dizziness, because you've cut off the blood supply to certain areas. You've increased blood pressure. Okay, so if you allow norepinephrine to be around longer than he should, you're going to try antidepressants. Beta blockers. Beta blockers block beta 1 and beta 2 receptors. So they're preventing norepinephrine from increasing heart rate, from increasing the stroke volume, from dilating your blood vessels. Okay, so his job is to decrease heart rate and blood pressure. Okay, so it's pretty common to know somebody on a beta blocker. Okay? And, got 2 slides left. This one, coordinated effects of the parasympathetic nervous system and sympathetic nervous system. Your objective says to know the following on this table. So if you look in your book on page 546, you'll see table 14.5. 14.5 tells you the different organs, and what does the sympathetic nervous system do to that organ, and what does the parasympathetic nervous system do to that organ. Okay? You need to know the bladder and urethra, the heart muscle, and the digestive tract organs. But you know these already. Okay, we already talked about it. So digestive tract organs. Parasympathetic, rest and digest. What does it do to your digestive tract organs? Causes them to do digestion, right? So it increases swallowing, it increases churning of your stomach. It causes digestion to happen. The sympathetic nervous system, what does it do to your digestive system? Turns it off. So it stops swallowing. It stops churning of the stomach. Okay, so you guys know these. Okay. And then finally, control of the autonomic nervous system. So we say that the autonomic nervous system is involuntary. And that is true to a point. But higher order brain areas can have an effect on the autonomic nervous system. So the information comes from the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus is the boss of the autonomic nervous system. But that hypothalamus gets information from the limbic system, from emotions. It also gets information from the cerebral cortex, from your frontal lobe, from decision-making areas. And he sends information the other way too. He sends information to the limbic system. He sends information to the frontal lobe. So for example, the fight-or-flight response, its job is to protect you from getting hurt, right? Standing in front of people giving a presentation. How many of you guys does that stress out? Okay? And it causes your sympathetic nervous system to go into high gear. You get a dry mouth, you can't talk. You start shaking, your heart rate raises. Okay, is that something you need to be afraid of from a physiological point of view? Are you going to get hurt? No. Your fear is an emotional fear. You are afraid that the people are staring at you and are going to make fun of you. Okay? That is your limbic system. So your limbic system is telling your autonomic nervous system that you're in danger when you're not. Okay? So they all talk to each other. All right. So that is it. We are done. We have finished the chapter. This is the same thing that was on the announcement slide. Okay, so it's just telling you have a quiz and objectives 1 through 5 to turn in the next chapter. Yes. So your sheet that you had your answers on with your group, turn it in the front. All right, guys, have a good weekend. I will see you on Monday. Don't let me go hide.